Yeah? Okay, so we're going to start looking then at Adam's family. And anyway, we saw there that Adam and Eve should have made a foundation of faith and a foundation of substance, but they didn't. And so Adam then fell into what we call the midway position. After the fall, he's in the midway position, and then depending upon what he did, he'd either go more towards God's side or more towards Satan's side. And so it says in the principle, all fallen people have good and evil aspects, which then make a base for a relationship with both God and Satan. And so Adam then was very, very changeable. He couldn't actually make conditions, because, you start doing something and then you break the conditions, Satan would invade, and it's very, very changeable. And so because he's so changeable, then God wasn't able to use him. And he was very unstable, and a lot of problems. And so what happened then is Adam and Eve had two children. And so God, in that sense, divided Adam. And so he had two sons, one called Cain and one called Abel. And Cain was the older son, and Abel was the younger son. And Cain, as the older son, was anyway in a position to have the same sort of feelings and emotions the archangel had, and he had he inherited more of the sort of fallen nature than Abel. And Abel was in position of Adam, and he was slightly better. And so if we look at the origin, the Cain and Abel positions. This is the theology of it. That there's two falls. There's a relationship between Archangel and Eve, which we call the spiritual fall, a relationship between Eve and Adam, which is a physical, it's actually a spiritual and physical fall. And so when we compare these two, we can say the spiritual fall, the relationship between Eve and Archangel, is actually worse, because it never should have happened at all. In that sense, it was completely outside the principle. Angels and human beings never should have had that kind of relationship. Whereas though Adam and Eve, that relationship was within the principle originally, because they were originally to be husband and wife. And we look at it in terms of Eve's motivation. We can say Eve's motivation in terms of the spiritual fall was less good, it was more unrighteous, whereas though her motivation with the physical was less unrighteous. Part of her motivation was she wanted to get back to God. Yeah. So the first son then, Cain, he came to represent this first relationship and had more fallen nature, and the second son, Abel, came to represent the second relationship, had less fallen nature. And so in that sense, Cain is to go through Abel to reach God. One is further from God, one is closer to God. So it's just a relative thing. It's not one is good and one is bad. It's just a relative thing. One stands in the position of the archangel, being older, more knowledgeable, wise in that sense. One is in the position of Adam, being younger. It's also like the relationship between body and mind. The body should follow our mind, and the fallen man should follow the Messiah. So, very interesting little passage here. How does evil grow within us? We can become good only if our body obediently follows our mind. All too often our body rebels against the mind's directions, repeating by analogy Cain's murder of Abel. This is how evil grows within us. For this reason, the religious way of life requires that you make the body submit to the commands of the higher mind. So how does that work? Anybody give me some examples of that? How does your body dominating your mind lead to the growth of evil within you?
When you don't resist the desire to eat whenever your body wants it,
Okay.
you submit to it, and then you become weaker.
Okay, and what kind of a person do you become? You become a greedy person, yes. Yes, because you're not able to have delayed gratification. You become a greedy person, yeah?
You can't prioritise good actions even on your own personal level.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do it when
Yeah.
you interact. It's much more difficult
Right.
to interact with others.
Yeah, so an example?
Like eating. If I'm constantly submitting to my body, and then there's a plate and there's, I don't know.
Well, that's... You eat somebody else's food. Yes, or, supposing you have an appointment and you have to get out of bed early to get to that appointment, but your alarm clock goes, you don't get out of bed, you're late for the appointment, yes? And then that causes problems, and all sorts of things. And sometimes serious problems come because people don't, arrive at the right place at the right time. If you're in an army, and you decide, well, I'm going to sleep in today, I'm not going to, we think we'll postpone the attack for an hour. It's a complete wipeout. Yes? So that's the way it is. That's why Father puts huge amount of... That's what Father talks about more than anything else in all his speeches, is mind-body unity, honestly speaking. Yeah, because when the body dominates the mind, and you get this in everything, you get in eating, in sexual things, people can't control the sexual desire, etc., 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 and this uncontrollable sexual desire grows, it leads to, seducing people, or having what's called one-night stands, goes on from that to rape. Yeah? It just grows and grows, and the evil grows and grows and grows until terrible things happen. When people can't control their temper, they get angry and their body goes like this, and they can't control it, and they give in to it, and they go hit somebody. And it goes on like this, becomes a habit, and then they murder somebody. Yeah? This is the way it works. Yes? It's very important, actually. It's a very important point. How does evil grow within us? Yeah, all too often our body rebels against the mind's directions, repeating, by analogy, Cain's murder of Abel. This is how evil grows within us. Yeah? Very important sentence there. For this reason, the religious way of life recognizes we must make the body submit to the commands of the higher mind. Yeah, so that's why I have a certain, kind of spiritual discipline. You go to Chongpyong, Is the schedule there easy to follow? No. So what happens when you start following, your body rebels, and then your mind says, right, I'm going to follow this schedule, I'm going to discipline my body. I told you about that time when the cold bath condition I was doing.
Yeah.
That for me, that's why I discovered that's the way it is,
Yes.
to be honest. And that's why living this life of indemnity, of cold showers, fasting, prayer, and all these things, it's to get the proper relationship between mind and body. Otherwise, you find yourself in a really difficult situation, and it's easy to react in the wrong way. It's easy to punch somebody's lights out. It's easy to say the wrong thing and cause offense. It's easy, what do you mean? So many times, it says in the Bible, the tongue is the most difficult thing to control. And once you said it, you can't, come back words. You can't withdraw it. But actually, it can create huge suffering and offense and evil, yes, through saying things which you shouldn't say. So that's why it is. That's the way it works. Okay? So, restoration in Adam's family then. So somebody, sure we've got these right around. Anyway, so Abel then was in the position of Adam, and Cain was in the position of Lucifer, and Abel then was closer to God, and Cain was further away from God. And so what indemnity conditions need to be made to restore the fall? So I said Adam and Eve should have made a foundation of faith and a foundation of substance. So in restoration, to restore it, Abel, has to make they both need to make a foundation of faith, actually. But anyway, they need to make a foundation of faith. And this is basically living a spiritual life. And then they need to make a foundation of substance, which means overcoming the fallen nature. And so Cain then, he's placed in the position to have the same feelings as the archangel. So instead of doing what the archangel did, he has to react differently. Yeah? He's placed in have the same feelings the archangel had, but instead of doing what the archangel did, he has to react differently. Yeah? So it's summed up by love God and love your neighbour as yourself. So that's a summary of the whole of the religious life. It's to love God, which means making a foundation of faith, living a spiritual life, and love your neighbour as yourself, and love your enemies, which is the foundation of substance. That's all it is really at the end of the day. Love God and love your neighbour as yourself. Yeah? That's all it is. But, anyway, we use this really complicated terminology. Okay, so Cain and Abel were brothers. What question normally arises when people look at the story of Cain and Abel?
Who did they marry?
Who did they marry? We're here. Doesn't say anything about Adam and Eve having daughters. So who did they get married to? Well, there we are. Who did Cain and Abel marry? So it doesn't actually say in the Bible who they got married to, and in the Bible it just says Adam and Eve had sons. And so, we're not the first person to have asked this questions. Jews, Muslims also ask this question. And so in the Jewish and Muslim traditions, it says that each time Eve gave birth, she gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. So it says in the Talmud and also in the commentaries on the Quran that Cain had a twin sister called Aklima, and Abel had a twin sister called Jamelia. Yeah? There we are. So what's the next question that naturally arises?
Did he marry her?
Sorry?
Does Cain marry his sister?
Right, who marries whom? That's right, there we are, see? Got the logic just right. Who's to marry whom? So again, it's very interesting. You read a commentary on the Quran written by the person who wrote the life of Muhammad, his first biographer. This is based upon what Muhammad would have taught. Adam told Cain to marry his twin sister to Abel, and he told Abel to marry his twin sister to Cain. Abel was pleased and agreed, but Cain refused, thinking he was better than Abel's sister. Instead, he wanted to marry his own sister. So what's going on here then? It's very, very similar, isn't it? Similar dynamic to the archangel Adam and Eve. So right here at the very beginning, this whole situation has been set up again for them to overcome their fallen nature and to do the right thing. Anyway, so Cain argued, and he wouldn't accept what Adam and Eve were suggesting. And so Adam and Eve basically said, okay, if you don't want to accept what we suggest, we'll let God decide. And so Adam said to Cain, you and your brother Abel should offer a sacrifice. Whichever of the two of you has his sacrifice received by God will have the more right to her. In other words, let God decide. So sometimes how do people decide things which they can't come to an agreement about? Toss a coin. Okay, let's toss a coin. Heads you win, tails I win. That's right. Heads you win, tails I lose. You lose. Anyway. And that's what people do. It's like, people throw these, the I Ching, all these sticks, and lots of different ways in which people do these things. They settle these kind of disputes in a way they feel, actually, we'll let God decide, and that's it. So I often wondered, why did Cain and Abel make a sacrifice or make an offering? I thought, that's not what people normally do, is it? But actually, then when I read this, I thought, okay, that's why they did it. And also, that's why, they got so emotionally involved and so upset. Anyway, so Cain and Abel, so that was the way. They were going to settle this dispute. So, this is an interesting point here, Father said. Right? Way back when, 1957. I'm not suggesting I've read all Father's speeches for the last 60 years, but anyway. Fortunately, you can do searches on these things now. From the time they made the preparations for the offerings, Cain already had hatred toward Abel. It was not that he momentarily felt hatred when God did not receive his offering. Rather, even before that took place, Cain hated Abel and wanted to beat him to death. They might think, why did Cain feel so upset? Why did Cain hate Abel so much? Father didn't actually say, but Father didn't realize actually Cain hated Abel way before they made the offering. It wasn't just, it was, as brothers, they'd obviously been fighting a lot and all kinds of issues they had. And so, anyway. So the next thing is, how should you make an offering? So Adam and Eve told Cain and Abel, both of you need to go make an offering. So how should one make an offering? Well, Jesus said, if you're offering your gift at the altar, and there you remember your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. So what is that saying about how Cain and Abel should have made their offerings?
Make friends first.
Yes. So who should have taken the initiative to make friends first?
Probably Abel.
That's right. It says if you're making your offering and you remember your brother has something against you. Cain had something against Abel. So Abel, before making the offering, he should have gone back and made it up with Cain. Yeah? And then they should have come and made the offering together. Yeah? Okay? That's what Jesus said when he's, commenting on this story. It doesn't actually say he's commenting on that story, but, one can easily draw the conclusion. Anyway, so I'll tell you the story of how it went then. This again from the Talmud and the Quran. The story goes like this. So Adam and Eve told Cain and Abel, right, you need to go make the offering on the Sabbath. So when the Sabbath came round, this is what happened. Abel set his alarm clock. The alarm clock went off, 5 o'clock in the morning. He jumped out of bed, had a shower, got changed, had a shave, put on his best clothes. He went out into the field and found the best lamb he could find, and he took it and he went to the altar and, slit its throat, put it on the altar as a gift to God and prayed. And it says fire came out of heaven and consumed his offering. And then Abel felt incredibly happy. He felt God has received my offering. He felt incredibly joyful. He felt the angels were singing, and he was so happy. Yeah, and he went off dancing and singing with the angels. Anyway, Cain overslept. When he got up, he put on his regular work clothes. He went into the kitchen and had breakfast. And after breakfast, he thought, I was supposed to make an offering today, wasn't I? He went into the larder and he found some cornflakes that were left over, all the sort of dust you get at the bottom. And he put it into a dirty cloth. And he went off to the altar and he put it on the altar and said, here, God, here's my gift. And the story goes that birds of prey came down and they took the rag and they ate up all his cornflakes and all the grain and all the seeds that he offered. And then Cain felt really depressed. He felt God hasn't accepted him after. He thought, what was all that about? And he went home in a mood, feeling down and depressed. Anyway, he bumped into Abel. And Abel was singing and dancing. Abel was so happy. And Cain said, what are you so happy about? And Abel said, I got up so early this morning. I made my offering. God accepted my offering. I can hear the angels singing. I'm so happy. I can feel God's love all the time. I'm so happy. And Cain said, that's not fair. Why should God accept your offering anyway? And he got really upset and angry. And then, so Cain's offering then was not accepted, whereas Abel's offering was accepted. As it says in Hebrews, by faith, Abel made a better sacrifice than Cain did. By faith, he's commended as a righteous man. So when we look at the two offerings, you can see from this story, one had made it in a better way than the other. And then from the Quran, it says here, Cain complained, your offering was accepted, but mine was not. Yeah? And Abel replied, Allah accepts only from those who are pious. In other words, I'm pious and you're not. How do you think Cain felt when he heard those words? Really happy. He's self-righteous little. And then Cain said to Abel, I will kill you, so you may not marry my sister. In other words, you're not marrying my sister. You're only going to marry my sister over my dead body, basically. Doesn't matter, you're not marrying my sister. Yeah? So the question is then, why didn't God accept Cain's offering? Well, it's not that God didn't reject Cain's offering sacrifice because he hated him. God didn't hate Cain. Cain was God's son just as much as Abel was. God loved Cain, but he couldn't accept Cain's sacrifice. Because Cain stood in a position to relate with Satan, which gave Satan rights over the sacrifice. So as it says in the principle, therefore God could not accept Cain's sacrifice unless he first made some condition justifying its acceptance. So what was the necessary condition Cain needed to make in order for his sacrifice to be accepted?
He had to bond emotionally with Abel.
Yeah, what does that mean? So it said that, that's straight out of the principle. God could not accept Cain's sacrifice unless he first made some condition justifying its acceptance. What was the condition of indemnity Cain needed to make in order for God to receive and accept his offering?
He had to make it through his brother.
Which means he had to make a foundation of substance. Yeah, he needs to make the condition necessary. For God to accept his offering, first he had to make a foundation of substance before. So what indemnity condition should Cain have made? the empty condition to remove his fallen nature, the foundation substance. And so, anyway, as I said, Cain's offering was rejected, it wasn't accepted. And then God counseled Cain. The Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? Why is your countenance fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? If you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door, its desires for you, but you must master it." Yeah. So Cain then had to deal with his fallen nature. Yes, and if he could overcome it, then God would accept him. He would also be accepted. If he made his foundation substance, he would also be accepted. But if he couldn't, then, Satan was there waiting to claim it. Yes?
I'm just curious, that you think that basically the offering was, the two offerings were already, like, as you described, like, Cain's offering was not a full-hearted offering, right? And do you think that Cain should have in the first place done a full-hearted offering, or what do you think would have been the first had to both then make a good offering, or?
Well, okay, let's try. Okay, so we know what happened. Let's try and think how could it have happened differently?
Yeah.
Well, as Jesus said, if you're there making your offerings, your brother's got something against you. You need to go and make it up with him. Yeah. So who woke up nice and early?
Abel.
And who overslept?
Cain.
So what should Abel have done?
Wake up his brother.
That's right. He should have gone round. He should have gone to the offering. Oh, Cain's not here. He should have thought, oh, I'm going to go and wake my brother up. And as a good younger brother, he should have knocked on the door and said, "Wake up, brother. Let's go make the offering together. Come on, wake up. I'll help you to get dressed. I'll go and get your clothes. Oh, you haven't ironed your suit yet. I'll iron the suit for you. Yes, I'll help you to prepare the offering. Oh, well, let's go. Let's find something nice. Yes, he should have when he was there at the altar, he should have missed his brother, and he should have gone back to get his brother, and he should have not in the way of banging on his door. "Come on, get up, you lazy old bum." Not like that. Yes, but as a younger brother, he should have spoken, woken him up gently, woken him up with love in his eyes, woken him up with respect and admiration in his eyes. Yes, and woken him up and said, "Come on, let's go and do it together. Let's go and make the offering together." Yes, he should have won his brother's heart. He shouldn't think, "Oh, lazy old so-and-so, etc., etc. He's fallen away, he's this, he's that, the other, he's, etc." He should have had this heart of a younger brother to want to go and save his older brother as a younger brother. So his older brother then would have, his older brother would have been really grumpy, yes? But then told his older brother jokes, so his older brother could smile and laugh, and finally his older brother could, get over his fallen nature. So Abel should have helped Cain to get over his fallen nature. Now, the thing Abel didn't do is he didn't help Cain to overcome his fallen nature. Abel has to help Cain to overcome his fallen nature. And that's what we saw when we look at Jacob. We'll see that's what Jacob did. Yeah, he helped Esau to overcome his fallen nature. Abel should have done that. Yeah? He shouldn't have made the offering by himself. He should have woken his brother up. He shouldn't have been self-righteous and thought, well, I'm the one that got up early. I'm the one that deserves to have my offering accepted. I'm the one that won the, I'm now going to marry the most beautiful sister. Yes? That's, so that's what went wrong.
So if Cain had got up really early by himself, by his own motivation, and focused just on God and made a perfect sacrifice, even though he still wasn't that friendly with Abel, even though he'd made an ideal sacrifice, would it still have been rejected?
Yes. Yes, but things would have turned out really differently. Okay, well, pause there and I'll explain why. So anyway, so what should have happened then? This is the fall of nature, not seen from God's point of view, leaving proper position, reversal of dominion. They should have overcome that. And so, okay, so Cain then has to love Abel. So if Cain is to love Abel, what's Abel's responsibility? He has to be lovable. Yes, he has to be lovable. Yes, he has to make it easy for Cain to love him. He has, but the way to make it easy for Cain to love Abel is for Abel to be like a little boy, like a younger brother, and then he can move his older brother's heart, yes, of care, yeah. He had to make himself lovable, but if he, was very arrogant and self-righteous and thought he was better, he did this better than Cain, did everything better than Cain, and he, kept on telling Cain, look, I'm better at this than you, I'm better than that than you, I'm better, yes. Then impossible for Cain to love him, yeah. So because he's not lovable, yeah. So he has to receive God's love through Abel. How easy is it to receive God's love through your younger brother? It's really difficult, but Abel had to make it easy for Cain to feel love through Abel, his younger brother, yeah. And submit to. How easy is it for an older brother to submit to a younger brother? Really difficult. Yes, Abel had to try and help Cain to be able to respect him, yeah, and to follow his ideas, and to realize actually it's a really good idea, Abel. Let's go and do that together, yeah. And if a younger brother's like that, there may be a younger brother who's much more intelligent, much more brilliant ideas, all sorts of things than the older brother. But if he always behaves like the younger brother to the older brother sees, actually, I've got a really intelligent younger brother, he's really smart, he's this, and this. Let's do it together. Let's start up a business together. You're the one with all the brains, I'm the one with all the muscle. Let's work together, let's, cooperate together doing this business. You can organize all this, and this. You know what I mean? And if he keeps that position of a good younger brother, it's relatively easy for the older brother to accept it. But if the younger brother tries to do it like that, that's really hard. Martin, you got your hand up?
What you mentioned earlier about the foundation of faith, both sides have to, in a sense, make the foundation of faith.
Yeah, yes.
But of course, as you mentioned as well, we have a capacity to recognize somebody is in the able position better than us.
Yes.
So we will report or something in that way. A lot of our capacity to deal with perhaps the rejection of our offering comes from the way in which we have prepared that offering.
Yeah.
So like the features that you've described shows that actually Cain did not really make a foundation of faith. Like if his offering is rejected, then and he has really made a lot of effort to do that, then he will seriously ask the question in his heart, why? Instead of just reacting angry.
Absolutely.
And he will be, obviously...
much more reflective, yeah.
God will speak to him.
Yes, exactly, yeah. Yeah, that's right, yeah. So there's another little story that goes along with this about Abel's sheep and Cain's crops. As you know, Abel looked after the sheep, Cain the crops. Anyway, so one day it was autumn and Cain woke up really early because it's time to bring in the harvest. So he got up early, went out into his field to survey the crops that he planted, and suddenly he noticed his field was full of sheep and cows and goats and horses, that all of Abel's sheep had trampled all his vegetables, eaten up all his grain, destroyed his harvest. And he was really furious and really angry. And anyway, so he went storming round to Abel's house and said, what's all the meaning of this? And Cain said to Abel said to Cain, I didn't let my sheep into your field, let's go and have a look. So they walked around the field and they found the fences were broken. So Abel said, look, you lazy bum, it's all your fault, you weren't mending your fences. And how do you think Cain felt about that? Then he realized, Cain thought, at last I got something I can blame my brother for. But actually, his brother said, actually, it's all your fault. And so Cain was completely lost it. And this is how it goes, this is what it says in the Bible. And Cain said to Abel, and it came to pass when they were in the field. If you look at the Hebrew, it's called the syntax is broken. The sentence doesn't complete. And Cain said to Abel. Cain actually didn't say anything to Abel. There was no conversation. The conversation between them had broken down. They were no longer on speaking terms with each other. Yeah? They could no longer speak to each other without completely losing it. They're no longer on speaking terms. Yeah? And it came to pass when they were in the field, and while they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. Because the conversation had broken down. They could no longer talk to each other peaceably. Yeah? And Cain murdered Abel. And another bit from the Quran. Abel said to Cain, "Yet if you stretch out your hand against me to kill me, I shall not stretch out my hand to kill you, for I fear Allah, the Lord of the worlds." So Abel then, Cain reached out his hand to kill Abel, and Abel didn't resist, which, to be honest, wasn't a good thing to do. He should have run away instead of, or at least defended himself, but he didn't. That was a mistake from Abel's side. So Cain murdered Abel, and the Lord said to Cain, "Where's your brother Abel?" And he said, "I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper?" And how did God feel? The fighting between Cain and Abel made God miserable, and more than any other time, his heart was broken when Cain killed Abel. God will be most pleased when the brothers make up with one another and come to him together. According to this principle, it's essential for Abel to restore his brother. Unless you restore Cain, God will not accept you. Okay. So, in that story, there's 3 stories. I'm going to come on to Peter's point. What are the 3 stories? Within the bigger story, there's 3 little stories.
There's the marriage issue.
Marriage issue.
And then the offering issue.
Offering issue.
And then the killing issue.
And the killing issue is about what? The field. So can you see a connection to this, to our theology?
Blessing?
Hmm?
3 blessings.
3 blessings, yes. How does that fit with these 3 little stories?
First one's individual's responsibility.
Which was,
The
Making the offering.
the offering.
okay,
And the second one is about your relationships.
Yeah.
The third one is your
dominion over the creation. Right, so when we look at these, which Cain and Abel, which one of them established the first blessing? Abel. Abel got up early, mind-body unity, made the offering. Cain slept in, overslept. Body dominated the mind. When your body dominates the mind, that's how evil grows within you, yes? And so this is the point. If Cain had been able to get up early and make his offering, then as Martin pointed out, he would have made the offering, it still wouldn't have been accepted, but he would have had mind-body unity, yes? And so he wouldn't have felt so depressed afterwards. He wouldn't have felt so angry afterwards. The reason he felt so depressed and angry, because he knew he'd made a mistake. It was all this sort of, Satan was accusing him. There's a lot of self-accusation. Whereas if he'd made the offering correctly, if he'd woken up early and done it correctly, and had good mind-body unity, he wouldn't have been accused, but he wouldn't have felt this accusation and this sense of guilt and blame. And his evil thoughts wouldn't have developed within him. Yeah? And then, as he says, the second one is to do with the marriage thing, who gets married to whom. He couldn't overcome his desire for his twin sister. Yeah, he wanted her for himself, a selfish love, selfish desire. And the third one was dominion over the creation. Cain didn't mend his fences. He hadn't established a 3rd blessing. So because he didn't establish the 3 blessings, it was easy for Satan to invade Cain's emotional and spiritual life. So Cain then lost his temper, became angry, and he murdered Abel. He no longer could control himself. Yeah, whereas if he'd made the offering correctly, then he may become angry, but he wouldn't have lost his temper and murdered his brother. He still would have been angry, but he would have been in control of himself. Yeah? And if he had good mind-body unity, he would have mended his fences. Yes? So these kind of things wouldn't have happened. It still would have been difficult, but it would have been easier. But so what really should have happened is that Abel should have won the heart of his older brother and helped his older brother to jolly him along. And if Abel had done this to his older brother and they'd done it together, made the offering together, and Abel said to Cain, "Why don't we let God decide this? If God says if your offering is accepted and mine's rejected, then I'm happy to, for you to get married to I can't remember her name now, and I'll marry. Yeah. So if Abel then had this kind of attitude and really, embraced and helped his older brother and helped Cain to overcome his fallen nature, things would have turned out so differently. And then even if Cain's offering had been rejected, it would have been easier for Cain to have said, yeah, okay, you're obviously the one. Yeah, it would have been easier for if Abel had done that to Cain, then Cain could have accepted God's decision that Abel should get married to this sister. You know what I mean? With good grace. But he couldn't do that. Yeah? And it's not just, obviously, Cain killing Abel is, without any justification whatsoever, because murder, there's no justification for sin, there's no excuse for murder. So it doesn't matter how badly Abel behaved, still Cain was not justified in killing him. Yeah? But still, Abel should have behaved differently, should have made it easier for Cain to overcome his fallen nature. As Father says over and over again, Father talks about the responsibility of Abel, to restore Cain at the risk of his life, shedding sweat, blood and tears to win his heart. Yeah, and that's the heart of what it is to go witnessing. Yeah, to save and restore one's brothers and sisters. And, the members of our spiritual community. It's easy to write people off, so-and-so doesn't come to church anymore and they're doing this and this and this, they're drinking, let's, forget about them. That's wrong. We are Abel and they're Cain in that sense because we're doing this and this and this, but our heart should be, how can I find my brother? How can I find my sister who's no longer here, who's this and this? How can I find this person? Yes.
Sorry, I'm just a small comment. Sometimes I think it can be difficult if the person in the position of Cain, it depends how, set in their ways they are, how, you could call it stubborn, but it can be difficult for the person in the able position to,
sure,
even though they try,
that's right. I'm not saying it's easy. As Father said, it's sweat, blood and tears. But, we need... I don't think... I've never got to that point of making that kind of effort, to be honest. Anyway, so this is a failure then. Didn't make a foundation of faith or a foundation of substance. And so what lessons can we learn from Adam's family? I'm just going to finish this. God's will can only be fulfilled by a combined effort of God and human beings. Another important point here, it says in the principle... God couldn't tell Cain and Abel how to make the sacrifices. It was their responsibility to work it out. Yeah, they had to listen to their original mind. They had to work it out how to make the offering. Yeah, that was their responsibility to work out how to do this. God didn't tell Abel, off you go and get your brother. That was something he should have discovered. He should have realized that himself. And it's the same with us. God doesn't tell us all the details of what it is that we should do. We have to work all sorts of things out for ourselves. Yeah? And if we develop a spiritual life, a prayer life, then actually God will reveal these things either through prayer or through somebody else. Yeah? We can work these things out. Again, this is a failure. God chooses someone else. So when then God chose Seth. And we've consciously searched for Abel-type figures to honour, listen to and follow. Okay, so that's the end. So... thank you very much indeed. I'm sorry I went on a bit over time.